Well, hello. How are you today? We are going to take a look into Module 5. There is one main thing that I wanted to concentrate on for this particular module, and that was the idea of what a perimeter query is, and kind of discuss a little bit more on some of the more important aspects of perimeter queries and why we have them, because it's not just a access feature. And then we're going to do one. We're gonna complete the perimeter query. So here's the thing with perimeter queries. They're essentially the database taking an action and asking for information. It's not you requesting. Well, it's you saying, hey, this is the perimeter that you need to complete this query, and it's kind of built into the database, so it's more secure than you would get, and that's kind of the main idea. But that kind of requires us to talk a little bit about what actually ends up happening. Okay, so this is kind of what I wanted to focus on. So in this case, access gives us a dialog box that asks for the parameters. And when we say parameter, we're meaning an argument of some kind, like some kind of data, just but a specific data point that we ask, that we give to the database. So in this case, it's the database asking us for the information. And this is because what started the idea of perimeter queries was because of SQL injection, and SQL injection is still a big deal today. I know of people that have won court cases because they were able to go in and find the data on a public data, or not a public database, but a private government database, and get the data that they needed to win the case with SQL injection. And because it still is possible to easily get into a database with SQL injection. So let's explain what SQL injection is. And I'm going to give you an example of that from Access itself, and then I'll show you how it's kind of used. And you can actually look it up, SQL injection. It's going to give you a little bit more of an idea of what it is, but I'm going to give you kind of the broad strokes, and we can look at the kind of the example. So the example is whenever we take and have a communication with the database server, we send it a SQL statement. And we've been talking about this, the SQL statements and what they do. It's the language that databases use that you need to use because it's a separate process. It's another application running off to the side, and it's waiting for SQL statements. You can subvert the whole statement. And the way you can subvert the whole statement is by using a clever use of what we call comments in programming languages. A comment in a programming language will make it so that the compiler ignores what is in that particular part of the text. So there's actually the ability to comment in SQL. So you can say SQL comments, and you can build queries that have inbuilt explanations of what the query is. And so you notice there that we have some specific text that is used to create comments within a SQL query. And what that means is we can send this whole thing, this whole string, to a database running, and it will just ignore all that's in here. It'll just ignore that. And then it'll carry out the instructions that you have. What if you built a website, and let's just take, for instance, one of the first websites that was, this one used to get broken into all the time. It's kind of an old school favorite, I guess. Okay, evidently I got to accept something from Yahoo. Okay, so let's say that I'm signing in, and I have in this website, I have this text box that is going to accept my login ID. Something you guys do every day. But what happens is, behind the scenes, in the code behind the scenes, they take the text of what you type in, and it's injected into a SQL query that asks for the hash of your password. And so, because Yahoo is not going to store your password, they store a mathematical version of the password. And so essentially, the password is stored on a database. And you're going to have a SQL query that asks for that password hash. And a password hash is just taking your password and mangling it with random stuff, but still doing it with a method where you can reverse it and get back the password. There's all kinds of different encryption methods out there. So what they do is they will put in a clever use of comments and make it so that what is going to be injected with the code behind the scenes, if you're writing code behind the scenes, they're going to take your actual sign-in, and they're going to inject it, and they'll do something like this. And let me get into Access so I can show you, because you're going to have a query when you ask the database for something. And let's just take, for instance, our SQL queries. This query right here. If we look at it, we can see its SQL version. And we have, you guys see it in here. But this would be what's in the code behind the scenes, and what the person that's writing the code that asks for the data from the database for the password, they're going to inject what you type into here. And let's say it's my bjosh@yahoo.com. They'll put it inside of the statement, and then take the statement after they've injected what you've typed into the data, to the text box, into the query. And so what you're typing in the text box actually becomes part of the query that is asked from the database. Well, what you can do is you can create a clever use of comments so that when you insert something in, this part right here that's at the very beginning gets commented out. The part at the, and then, whatever it is, then what they do is they just put a comment block in, and so that everything before you're injecting into, from the text box, the name into the SQL query, everything after it, everything before it gets treated as a comment, and they inject the SQL statement in. So essentially what they're doing is this. Where are you? Okay. we know that what we type in here is going to be put into a SQL query. But what if I could just say, okay, treat everything that is here before this as a comment, and then they proceed to write a SQL statement. Select star from everything. So they're taking, and that's why we call it injecting, because when a database is being queried, they're going to take the input that you put in, because you got to log in, so you got to put that input in. But they just say they put code in instead. They put SQL code in instead of their name. Yeah. And so that the clever use of commenting around that injected SQL code will break what is happening on the back end of the website. However that SQL query is built on the website. Well, let's go back to, where was that? Oh, right here. Okay. So however this was built, the comment is to subvert that back end routine that would normally just inject your login into a common SQL statement, just like we have, where are you? For some reason, I'm having a clicky day, a day where my clicks don't compute or something like that, whatever. So whatever they've built behind the scenes to build to have or generate a normal SQL query, that clever use of comments subverts it so that you can then inject it in. So they use SQL code and comments to subvert the SQL code and the SQL code that somebody writes for the login app on the website. Yeah, it's called SQL injection. They're injecting code directly into where you would normally put your login and password. Yeah, and there's all kinds of different forms of that. Cross-site scripting. Yeah, so parameters. What parameters did was it took the query out of it, and it allows you to build special queries on the back end of the database where all you need to do is send that pre-built query the parameter of your name. And it will automatically, from the database itself, no intermediary, no back-end code on a website or a web app, the database asks for just one thing, and that is the login, or the login and the password, that you type in. It's not expecting a SQL statement. You're just sending it parameters. You're just sending it the data itself instead of the whole SQL query, because the SQL query itself is being subverted. And then what you could do is then control any kind of malicious SQL queries, but with normal security, and you wouldn't have this glaring open door that you've invited into your living room just by simply asking somebody for their login ID. Parameter-based queries are built for that reason, is so that the SQL statement's already built at the database level, and the database is only accepting the parameters. Now, Access's implementation of it, we're going to actually implement. And we'll implement it with, we're just going to horse around and try to get in there and just follow along here with the book and then just play with it. And then I'm going to let you guys roll with the rest of the book. There's some, crosstab queries. Don't knock yourself out on it. However, crosstab query, it will be on the final. So spend a little time on it. Perimeter queries is the main big idea here out of this whole tutorial. And then, of course, spend some time on how to do the logical operators and all, the like operator, the in. Practice on that. Okay. When I come back, we're going to go in and create a parameter query, and we'll see where we go from there. All right. All right, we are going to get into perimeter query stuff and then the logical operators that go with it when we zoom in on it. Now, as discussed, a perimeter query is based on a query that's already been constructed. A SQL statement that's already been built, and all it's waiting for is one parameter in the statement itself that is going to be replaced with some kind of input field. And thus, what they're going to do is, behind the scenes at the database level, not on the back end of a website, they're going to take that query and they're going to inject the parameter. Like, say we want to enter last name. Well, the parameter will be injected in here. Whatever we decide to type in, then the actual query will be based on that last name. So here's the funny part. This is really, really funny. Parameter queries based on injection. In fact, everything in computer science that works between and across apps all happens with injection. So this is pretty common. And so what Access is doing at the database, or what the database is doing at that level, is using an already created query and injecting the parameter in. So we're back to injection. Yeah, it's hilarious. So the database is doing the injection, not the website. So there's no way that they can subvert the parameter that you're typing in, because you're not injecting that parameter into a SQL statement that you're then sending to the server. You are just sending it the parameter that's going to be plugged into a query that's already been created. And therefore they can't use that little commenting trick of the SQL language itself, because at the database level it's more rigid once the query is created. So we got to create a query that we want to then add a parameter to. And so what I'm going to do here is, let's go ahead and go into the query wizard, and let's just, I want to give you an example. Let's build a query, and why are you being a stinker? Create query wizard. There you are. All right, simple query. Let's go to table jobs, and let's say that I want to know how much time they put on a job. And then I want to go into here to volunteers, and I want their first name and last name. Let's say that maybe I want to do some kind of lookups based on city and last name possibly.
This might answer your question. According to Wikipedia...
Ziggy, shut up. Ziggy, stop. Sorry. Yeah, that happens sometimes. I don't know why, but yeah, she has a mind of her own. Apologies. All right, so as I was stating, we want the city, and maybe we want the phone number, and then let's say whether they're trained or not and how long they've been around. That's our query. And we're going from two different tables. So I'm going to click next, and I'm going to say next, and then finish. All right, now let's go into design view, because this starts up our first little kind of interaction into the criterion that you can apply. So this is, it looks like jobs query. Is this what we did? Okay, it's called jobs query. And we're going to go to design mode. Let's clear this stuff out. There we go. Design mode. Thank you. This is where we get into the logical operators that we were talking about, and that you can actually apply to this, to your data. And what we can do is right now, when I run it, I'm running only these two data sets. You know what? Let's actually, because it's just not giving me enough data for a good example. Let's make a change. Let's see if we can't just delete this right off the bat. It might be too much of a stinker for us. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, that's right. We got to get rid of the whole thing to it. Yeah, all right. All right, we're going to start over real quick. We had Ziggy interrupting and all kinds of stuff going on. Let's go to Query Wizard again, and I'm going to go ahead and call this from volunteers only. We're going to get first name, last name, city, phone number, email, and we're not going to go with anything from another table because I just want to get more data showing up here. And if we join it with another table, we only get the existing data for the other table as well. So sign up date. Yeah, let's say that we have that too. Okay. All right, now we got something a little bit better to work with. What do we call this? More volunteers query 1. Okay, let's close this. Let's delete this guy. This is the old guy. Let's delete him. Yes. Okay. Now let's rename this query. Rename, and let's call it lookup, because we're going to have it doing lookup eventually. But let's look at, let's run the query. Let's look at kind of what it gives us. It gives us, this data. Let's go into design view and let's make it tailored with what we can do with the criterion. And with the criterion, we can do things like, well, let's just see what kind of data can we pick out here. If I go in here to what kind of data do we got that we can play with? We got street, we got city, but it's all the same. We got zip code. We can play with that. Yes. Did I add it to the query? No, that's fine. They're all 555? Really? Gee whiz, Jiminy Cricket. All right. You know what? One more time. You guys are going to get used to this. All right. Query Wizard. Because I think a lookup on the zip code will work better for this example data. So I'm going to add that real quick. And you can have a query based on a query, by the way. It's going to, last name, street, city. Let's do zip code because that's the one we're going to play with. Oh, we could, no, I don't want to mess with that. Okay. All right, we got some example data. Let's say that we eventually want to find we want to be able to enter in a zip code and show the data from that particular zip. Or what if we wanted to show only the people who start with the last name of B? And when we can actually tailor this data down with the criterion field, and then we can modify that into a parameter query. So let's play with the criterion field real quick, and using a match in a query. And let's play with the like comparison operator, and let's look at, kind of how that works. And we might even be dangerous and get out the whiteboard. Okay, well, let's be dangerous. Yeah, dangerous scribbles of doom. Okay, there we go. All right, I've got it ready. It's loaded, just in case. We might have to get it going. Let's play with the criterion. And this is the data we want to tailor down, and that we're going to want to get to the design mode, the design view. I just right clicked on that to get to design view because somehow it got lost, but that's all right. All right, let's just play with this, and let's use the like comparison operator. Now, the like comparison operator means that it's searching for a particular string or sequence of characters that it matches. And we can, and I'm just going to throw this out there. We're going to say like, and then we're going to just say B here. Now, you notice I'm putting that in double quotes, because that's when we refer to a string, we always put a string in double quotes when we're working with programming languages, because what you're actually doing here is sort of writing code with a logical expression, whether something is true or not. And you guys learned those logical expressions in grade school. They're x greater than 0. That's a true or false type thing, true or false. Look at us, we're getting dangerous. X is greater than 0 is a true or false. So anything that will evaluate to a true or false, that's what a logical expression is. We use the greater than and the less than operators. Now these are the operators. The greater than and the less than are the operators. These are the operands. Now, a true or false statement always has two operands. And unless you're looking for using a special kind of comparison operators, and then there's the logical operators that go with that, because you can do this. You can say x is greater than 0 and x is less than 100. That kind of expression is done a lot. It's because we only want numbers where x is greater than 0 and where the numbers where x is less than 100. And when you're using the criterion, it's always easy to kind of lose this fact that the field record that you're using, the field record that you're comparing on that is in the criterion, that's the one that is x. So in this case, what we're doing is we're putting the criterion inside of last name. So that means that x is last name. That would be last name. Or and of course it doesn't make sense because these are expressions with numbers, but we could do this with let's modify that to being the zip code. We can put in a criterion that means that it's greater than 0. Now you notice that I'm just putting greater than 0 in there. But there is no x. That's because it's implied that you will say, if you're putting a logical expression in there, that x is just not there because it's already determined what x is. It's the zip, because I'm in this criterion fold. So in this case, if I'm doing a criterion over here, what I'm saying is, in the criterion field, I will be putting less than 0 underneath that zip criterion. That's actually what I put in. But what that means is, it means zip is less than 0. So zip would go right here. And for some reason, my little marker stopped working here. Something happened. Okay, that's fine. Good, because we're not being dangerous. All right, I'm not being silly. All right, I'll have to figure that out. But the x is implied. And so these logical expressions look very weird, because you're like, oh, but I learned this in grade school. I know how that works. I learned x is less than 100 in middle school or whatever, whenever you did. I know how that looks, but it doesn't compute to what this is asking us for. Because if we want to put an and in here, we would use your and logical explorer. And if I remember right in SQL, it should be the ampersands. It could be just and. Well, whatever. And less than 100. So essentially, it looks really weird because you've got this string, and I know you guys can't see it very well. That's what I'm actually typing in. So the x is actually implied. And so a lot of people have that problem where, since this is in the criterion of zip, zip is less than 100 and zip is greater than 0. Now, if I remember right, it's either and or 2 ampersands. I'm pretty sure it's and in SQL. They're logical operators, access logical operators. You can just actually do a quick search, just so, because I use references all the time, literally, because guys, I'm always programming I'm always working with 7 different programming languages, and access is just another one. Logical operator, criterion, access. Okay, all capitals and. Or means one or the other. One or the other has to be true. Now, I know we did the truth tables, I think, if I remember right. And I think we've already kind of talked about this. So it would be and right here. That's what would go in the criterion, but you wouldn't have zip because that's implied. So this is asking for, we want to list every zip code that's greater than 0 and less than 100. Now you notice here that we got a problem because zip code we didn't put in as a number. We put it in as a string. So you notice that we can't actually use these kind of expressions with strings. Now, one expression that we can use for a string is the like. And the like is doing something like this. And let's frame it in the way of x. X, like, is it all caps? No, it's just like. And let's say I want anyone that starts with B. And I think we'll have to do capital. I can't remember whether it's case sensitive or not. So X is actually last name. Now, what we put in the criterion is just like B. We can add other criterions with logical operators, and we can say and like C, but this would be a problem because to make it true, we're saying it has to have B in it and C in it. So the last name would have to have B and C in it for it to show. Now, if I did, this one is a little bit better because or the last name would have to have B or C in it. Let's just see if it works. It's been a while since I've played with this. And let's get in and play around with this criterion stuff. What? I started up a whole nother thing of access. I'm being silly. Okay, so we're not going to do zip. We're going to do the last name. We're going to say like B. Okay. Oh, shoot. Okay. Now, let's save this and let's run it. Okay, so evidently something didn't work. Probably using the like statement wrong. Well, let's get rid of it and debug. Yeah, I forgot one little niggling thing. We can't just say because it's matching it with anyone that has just B for last name. What we got to do is give it a wildcard, and we have to say anything that starts with B, and the asterisk means ends with anything else. And that's a pretty common wildcard character for pretty much every type of search function that you can find in any app and whatnot. So we could say like B asterisk, all of them, or like C asterisk. And what this would do is it would find everybody that starts with the letter B for last name and everybody that starts with letter C for the last name. And if we wanted to just match it to any character, it had C, this would be better. If they had if they started with B and had any characters afterwards, or they had any characters before and had C somewhere in and any characters after, and C just has to be somewhere in the last name. And I don't know. I mean, we can play with it. I mean, let's fix this real quick. I'm going to go in here to the criterion and I'm going to put B asterisk in. And then what I'm going to do is now I'm going to run, and it's going to give me every last name that starts with a B. So we see we have it all starting with B. Okay, let's get a little crazy in here. Let's add to kind of the example, and just sometimes I fail utterly when I go out and start bird walking on stuff. But let's do this. Let's go ahead, because this is a feature. Let's bring this in better and zoom. Okay, so we can zoom in at this criterion box, and we can get a little bit more complex without it being all little like that. And I'm going to say kind of what we did on the whiteboard. I'm going to say match anything that starts with B and has U in it. So I'm going to use the wildcard in front and the U and the wildcard behind, and then close it. I have no idea. It's been a while. So let's see if this actually does something. Yeah, there it is. It's really quite cool how slick you can get with these queries and asking for data based on logical operators. That's the and the or. Look at the truth tables for and or so that you get an awareness of how if statements work. Because essentially what we're doing is we're working on a graphical interface that's meant to make it easier to work with if statements. Instead of having to program the code, they give you this interface. And then we can, use it. So that certainly works. Okay, now let's modify some things here. What if I wanted to do a lookup based on the first few characters that, maybe I didn't have the full name of the person, or maybe I did have the full name, but I wanted to bring up the last name, and my data set's so large, I know I've got people that has the same name. Maybe they gave me the last name of Smith. Well, what Smith? What Smith are we talking about? So this would be a very good example on what a parameter query is. And that's what we started talking about, started off talking about. So we're going to actually do it now with this example. Let's see. Hopefully Ziggy doesn't get involved. And then, I just said her name. I might have to tell her to shut up again. Let's get into a parameter query. Remember, the query has to exist first before we can inject the parameter into it at the database level. So let's modify this query to open it up a little bit. Let's just get rid of this criterion. And what we can do is, in the criterion box, we can inject a parameter that we want the logical expression to operate on. And what we do is we just surround it with 2 square brackets, and then the prompt for the input will show up. And that's all the parameter query will do, is just bring up that prompt, and then you'll enter in the string you want of what you're searching for, and it'll show the records that match that particular query using the logical expression that you put into it. So I'm going to say, okay, I want to have an input, and my prompt, I'm going to put 2 square brackets in there, and let's zoom in on this. Let's zoom in on this so it's not looking stupid. Okay, so you see I've got there's no way to zoom in any further on this other than, to use Windows tools. But that's the 2 square brackets, that's above the enter key. An open and a close above the enter key. And what I'm going to put inside of it is the prompt. And I'm going to say enter last name. Now, enter root. Let's say enter root last name. So basically they can start entering just any characters to bring up, if it's like, if they say my name is Bustadoris, blah, 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 and we have no way of knowing how to spell Bustadoris or whatever, we just need to put in BU because we infer that it starts with BU. So I'm going to say enter root last name. And basically, I'm asking for the start of the last name that you're looking for. Okay, now that is the prompt. But we need what we're going to do with that prompt. We need the logical operation that we're going to do. And we're going to say when, and remember how we wrote this, because we're inferring the X. So it's kind of like X, meaning last name is like, and then whatever the user enters in. And then what we're going to have to do is we're probably going to have to append the asterisk on it some way. I think, we might even just do that. And remember, X is implied. Let's just see if this is going to work out the way I want it to. Where we enter in the last name, the root of it, and then it gets the last bits of it. Okay, if not, I'll refresh myself on the proper syntax and semantics of the way the criterion works. Okay, let's see if this works. I'm going to save it. Yeah, so it doesn't work. Okay, guys. So to refresh myself, I typed in, for my search term, I think I typed in append wildcard asterisk to parameter access. And I brought up this nice little web page to kind of get me brushed up on the syntax and semantics. And right here, you want to use wildcards with the parameter query. It gives me the example. So it looks like they append it with the ampersand, and the ampersand is the operator to append the wildcard onto the inputted prompt. So let's go in and apply that. And you know, guys, this stuff, you put it in a search term, use ChatGPT, whatever, to find these references, because all these rules on how to match how to use the like, the ors, and the ands, they're always going to be something that you're going to be looking up from language to language, system to system, but they all behave the same. Logical operators, a less than and a greater than, an and operation and an or operation, all are the same across all different programming languages whatsoever. So my prompt needs to put in, let's go ahead and zoom in on it, and let's hopefully make this work, because I'm going to go nuts if it doesn't. The ampersand says append it to my prompt. And what do I want to append to the prompt? The wildcard. Okay, now what this should do then is, if I save it, I won't get an error because the syntax is good. And when I run it, if I type in B, it brings up everything that starts with a B. Beautiful. Yes, we got it. Now what if we want just BU? BU. Well, we just run the query again. And you know, we can just run the query again and send it to parameter, and let's say BU. So we're doing our own SQL injection, but properly at the database level. That's what parameter queries are. Okay, guys, this was a good example and walk into the logical operators and operations. Look into more on websites like I show here that Microsoft has on using parameter queries with access and logical operators and logical operations. You know, there's just a wealth of information out there. Use wildcards and queries and parameters and access. If you just use that search term right there, you would get to this page fairly easy. Let's just test that. There it is, first in line. Use wildcards in queries and parameters and access. Okay, guys, look at the different types of things. And remember, don't forget about that implied X. It drives me insane. It totally drives me insane. I want that X to be there so bad. I want to say X is like B, or X is like C, whatever. That's the kind of, you know, remember, it's implied. So if you need to build an expression, build it with the X in there, and it'll make more sense. And it will also kind of more align to how programming languages work and do things. And it kind of, you know, gels in everything, because it just looks nutty when you're not describing what the operation is happening on, because you're putting the, yeah, it's implied because of where you put the criterion and when you, and where you zoom in. Okay, guys, those are the main goals that I had for you guys to kind of talk about. And until next time, thank you. Bye.